Hello, welcome to the podcast. Today I'm going to show you how to go from zero to podcast launched in 30 days. I'm going to give you the full blueprint. Let's dive in. Okay, so let's look at a couple of things. How do you go from podcast launch, from zero to published in 30 days? Let's see. Before we look at that, let's see why most podcasts fail. It's not because they're not experts, not because they don't know what they talk about, right? Let's see. Most podcasters they fail before their 50 episodes. They have great intentions. They start a podcast is awesome, but then everything fades and it widows out because there is no system. They skip the strategy and they just hit record. There is no content plan beyond the first episode. They're overwhelmed by editing and production, no distribution or marketing plan, so they don't have any listeners, and so they start wondering if they're just talking into the void. Nobody's listening to the podcast, no engagement. They're not hearing from people. They're just talking and speaking into the black hole, and so they're like, "Oh, done." This blueprint will help you fix all that, right? So 70% of podcasters quit before episode 10. Yeah, that's true. So now let's see. The 30-day launch roadmap. The first thing in week one is you're doing the strategy and positioning. You're working on how do I make my podcast stand out? How do I make it clear such that when my target listeners see it, they're like, wow, this podcast was made for me. How am I going to market the podcast and all that? So the strategy and positioning. What's the name of the podcast? What am I focusing on? Who is my podcast for? This is where we'll work on that. And then the next thing is the content plan and setup. Okay, so what is the content plan? How often are we publishing episodes? What would our episode look like? Are we interviewing guests or is it just solo episodes? And then we're reaching out to guests, having them be on the podcast. And then week three, we'll record and produce. Okay, so record and produce. So we record the first 4 to 5 episodes so we can batch release and batch launch them. Okay, and then week four, we launch and distribute. So week four, we're launching, we're promoting, we're talking about the show. Everything is just going out there on socials, on Instagram, on DMs, everything. We're talking about the podcast. And then the next thing is let's break down each week one by one. So we have the strategy and positioning. So with strategy and positioning, what does that mean? First, we have to choose your niche, the intersection of what you know, what your audience needs, and what's searchable. Okay. Next is you define your avatar. Who are you talking to? Who's your podcast for? You want to name them. You want to give them a job title and a pinpoint. Every episode speaks to this person. Okay. And we want to name your show, right? Something searchable, memorable, benefit driven, something clear, not clever. Okay. And then in strategy and positioning, we're also working on the brand and the cover art. Okay. Cover art is what shows up on Apple, Spotify, and all the podcast listening platforms. That's what people see. The podcast name is what people see, and all those things, right? So we're working on that. And then for week two, we're doing the content planning and setup, right? So we want to map your first 8 episodes. Okay. 3 episodes for launch day, 5 more weeks of content runway. Okay. And then the content pillars you will be talking about, we work on that too. And we're also working on titles, the promise and curiosity set titles, right? Now for the tech setup checklist, where are you hosting the podcast? Gospel Lips and Transit, we're setting that up, right? What are you using to record? We're showing you how to use the recording and doing some test runs. For solo recordings, the softwares you're going to use for recording and editing. And then for the mic, USB mic, the mic you're using for recording, you get one. If you don't yet have one, you learn how to set it up and use it. And then the pop filter, the quiet room, and yeah. So week three, you're doing recording and production. Okay. So we record 3 to 4 episodes in one sitting, consistent energy, weeks of runway. We're speaking to one person, we're speaking slow and pause, and we use stories, not lectures. We work on the intro and outro formula, the 30 seconds intro and outro formula, and the CTAs too, the 50 seconds outro CTAs. We work on that so that we can just, for the episodes, we can just put plug and play when it comes to editing. And then, of course, the show notes and the SEO, that would also be done. Okay. And then for the launch and distribution, with a 3 episode launch strategy, I like to call it 4 episode long strategy because, 9 seconds of trailer and then 3 episodes of regular length. And what's happening is that for each of those episodes, we do 3 to 5 really high quality clips, one blog post on your blog, and then an email newsletter that goes out talking about the podcast, 2 to 3 carousel posts for Instagram, socials, 3 to 5 quote graphics. And so these are content assets to talk about the podcast, to share the podcast, and get people to go check out the podcast. So beyond launch, right? What do you need to stay consistent? Now, we've already built a content calendar. We've planned 4 weeks ahead. We have assigned teams. We've confirmed guests. We've prepped outlines. You've bashed your recording. You record 4 episodes per month in 1 or 2 sessions. And you've outsourced what drains you, right? And if editing takes 4 hours, $300 per hour, that's 1,200 per episode lost, right? Right. So what I mean by is that if your editing takes you 4 hours and you're someone who, what you do, you make up to $300 per hour. So if you're spending 4 hours editing, that's time you could actually be used to make money or recover yourself to make more money. So the thing about the people that actually survive is that they have one thing in common, a system. So we're going to help you work on that and you get a system so you can consistently publish and create podcast episodes. So 1 hour of recording gives you, and I'm just being conservative with what I wrote here, 1 hour of recording gives you one podcast episode, one YouTube video, one blog post, 5 to 10 social posts, one email newsletter. Okay. Now, so one podcast episode, one YouTube video, one blog post, 5 to 10 social posts. With this one, depending on how long your episode is, you could get up to 30 from here. And so if you multiply that by 4, that's about 60 to 80 pieces of content per month from just 4 hours of recording. And this is not just generic content, this is actual content of you talking, you explaining, you telling stories. And yeah. And so with the podcast, you can be consistent on all social platforms, even without doing extra work. So if you're ready to launch your podcast, we'll handle everything so you can just show up and talk. Strategy and positioning, production and editing, distribution and SEO, content repurposing. Book your free discovery call. The link is in the description. See you in the next episode.